I got to tell you, next up is a guy that I was introduced to back in 1997 when I was, 28? And he was, or he still is and was working with TopRanked back then. And I was actually the P-boy for the Mohegan Tribe back then, and I'm not proud of that. But he came out and did one of the first shows at Mohegan. And I think it was, if I recall correctly, it was Tony. Was it Tony? I think it was Tony. And since then, he's been working with TopRanked as, I guess, the chief matchmaker and do-it-all man. And I'd like to introduce Bruce Trampler. He's been doing this before I was born. So, Bruce, come up to the mic. And then what we're going to do is after Bruce gives you some history on matchmaking and everything and what he's done, we're going to have Andy and Greg come up here and speak for another 15 minutes maximum about matchmaking. Here you go. Bruce, come on up. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mike, and thanks to everybody for coming out here. These are really helpful and informative and very important sessions, I think, where all the commissioners can get together, executive directors, and you guys are the people who help direct traffic for people like myself, Bob Aram, Brad Goodman, who's our other matchmaker. And so I appreciate everyone's presence here and the support that you give our sport. Mike Mazzulli likes to pass himself off as a young man just because he was born after I made my first match. But I was a freshman at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, and my first fight, a kid named Bill Douglas. Well, he wasn't a kid. He was already 27 years old. I was 18 years old. And Bill Douglas, they told me to get an opponent for him. And so I only knew one other middleweight. His name was Hilton Whitaker from Union, New Jersey, which was right next to my hometown. So I got a hold of his people, George Branch and Tommy Parks, and we did this fight. Bill Douglas, the local fighter, was down twice in the first round. He was down again in the third round. And although it was a sensational fight, and although he won the decision, people are running up to me and saying, "Boy, you're a great matchmaker. What a sensational fight that was. That was terrific." And believe me, I had no idea what I was doing. And that was January of 1968. Before a lot of you were born. So that just shows I had some good luck very early in the game. I went on from there to work for Angelo Dundee and his brother Chris in Miami, two Hall of Fame legends. That was in '71. Muhammad Ali was in his prime then. 78, I'm sorry, I was hired to work as matchmaker at Madison Square Garden in New York. And then 3 years later, I was hired by Bob Aram at TopRanked. And we originated the ESPN series of weekly fights. Network fights were in their prime then, so we often had fights on weekends in Atlantic City, where we'd have fights Friday night ESPN, Saturday on ABC or CBS, and Sunday the same thing. It was really the golden age of boxing, and I'm so fortunate to work at TopRanked and with Bob Aram, who originated the ESPN series. He opened up the Mexican market. He opened up the Filipino market with Manny Pacquiao, and it's just been a wonderful ride, very historic. And we've had the opportunity to really be pioneers in boxing, on the cutting edge of the fight game, which today has grown into a huge business. I mean, sure, we lose money on a lot of shows trying to develop fighters, but Bob Arum is willing to invest in our development of young talent, which is why, we've had Oscar De La Hoya and Floyd Mayweather and Miguel Cotto and as young fighters, Manny Pacquiao and George Foreman as older fighters or more mature fighters that we took over. We've had the best fighters in the fight game for the last 25, 30 years, and we hope to continue that way. And we certainly appreciate the cooperation and support of the boxing commissioners. When I started full-time, most states didn't even have a boxing commission. The ones that did, the commissioners would show up, collect the taxes, any applicable license fees, and that was that. Somewhere along the line, commissioners have got more involved in the matchmaking and the promotion. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good, but that's what it is today. So we're fortunate to work with a number of very intelligent, very commissioners who really understand boxing, understand the fighters, and those commissioners are here today. They know who they are, and we really appreciate what they do for us and for the fans and for the networks. So that's pretty much it. That's almost 50 years in boxing, and again, I'm happy to be here. I'm proud to be here, and so I guess if anyone has any questions about matchmaking, or I could talk for hours on that, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer the questions. And with the exception of Bob Bennett, I'll take questions from anybody. Yes, sir.
I'd like to know what your definition of a provable value is. Obviously, and we've been through this before,
Yeah.
but the promoter's perspective on an approvable bout and the regulator's perspective on a provable bout, in my opinion, is almost night and day. So, seeing how you've been with TopRanked for a lot longer than I've been with the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and I'm not the easiest guy to get by, I'd like everybody to know what's provable with your years of experience that I certainly do respect.
Okay, I think that's a great question, and you certainly open yourself up for abuse here. But I'm okay. No. First of all, Bob Bennett is a relatively new commissioner or executive director, and we've kind of watched him grow into the job and mature. There was a time when Bob Bennett, I felt, was very arbitrary in approving fights. I thought that he would rather err on the side of disapproving, but I think he's coming along fine. I mean,
I'm not asking you to evaluate me. I'm asking you to.
No.
That's irrelevant. I'm asking you your definition of an approvable bout.
One thing leads into the other.
Then I'll evaluate you after you answer my question.
Absolutely. That's all is fair in love and war. So I think that there are veteran commissioners here who understand boxing, and I think Bob Bennett is growing into that. He's getting familiar with fighters, and to me, an approvable fight is something that's entertaining. I don't think we would ever put forth a match to you or any other commission where someone where it's lopsided and somebody's going to get hurt. And I was talking. Here's an example of an approvable fight. Greg Serb earlier this year in Pennsylvania did a fight. Jesse Hart, an undefeated super middleweight that TopRanked promotes, and we offered up Deshaun Johnson, who had like a 20-19 record. I don't think Bob Bennett would have approved that because I don't think he really knows those fighters. He's not familiar with them. Greg Serb did know them, and the match was easily approved. And again, nobody's trying to get over on anyone. We believed it was going to be a good action fight, And sure enough, Deshaun Johnson, with his 20-19 record, dropped Jesse Hart twice and lost a very, very close decision. In fact, Jesse Hart was barely awake at the end of the fight to know that he won the decision. So an approvable fight is something that's not going to embarrass the fans, the promoter, the televising network, and certainly the commission, because I know if it's a bad fight or if it's a bad decision by your judges, you're going to get the calls on Monday morning. I understand that. And we don't want you to get any calls about the quality of a fight. If it's a bad fight, we don't want to do it, first of all. We have a...
I could appreciate what you're saying, but you don't have to be in business 20 years with what's out there on the internet and YouTube and the sources of information that are available. But when I go, see now, you put me on the spot right now, and all I
Okay.
asked you for was a definition. When I go to you specifically, or let's say TopRanked, see now, you came at me, and I say, this fight is 20-0, and this fight's 20-0, and you tell me it's an automatic approvable bout. And don't tell me that didn't happen, because it did. And then I said, you mean to tell me it doesn't matter who fighter A fought and who fighter B fought for that fight to be approved? And I don't want to pick out any countries, but I'll get a call from the matchmaker and say, hey, Bob, this guy's 20-0, but he's been driving a cab. I go, oh, now why are you even talking to me about him driving a cab? I want to know about his record and if it's going to be an approvable bout. Because I guarantee you, if you had everybody in this room write out what's an approvable bout, you'd probably get about 20 different responses.
Right.
So when you come back, or your company comes back and tells you that's approvable, it doesn't make a difference if I got 26 months on the job and you got 50 years on the job. That's an inaccurate statement for you to make.
You're absolutely right, and records are not. They're a help in making an approvable fight, the fighters' records. But if you actually know the fighters and who they fought, because it's all relative. Not every fighter is created equal, and for every 20-0 guy, I could probably find a guy with a losing record that would beat him. You know, they're not all matched the same. Jesse Hart, as an example, if he had fought the same guys Deshaun Johnson fought, Jesse Hart wouldn't have been undefeated at that point. So a commissioner has to consider all these factors. The actual numbers in a record are immaterial. We've got a guy, Vasyl Lomachenko, who was an Olympian. He was a gold medal winner. In his first fight, he insisted on fighting for a world championship. First fight out of the amateurs. And he was good enough. I didn't care what his record was. No champions were available for his first fight, but for his second fight, we got Orlando Salido, a veteran of many years of fight. We didn't consider it a mismatch because it was 1-0 against God knows what Salido's record is. And it was a terrific fight. It was a split decision. We're probably going to rematch it again later this year. But it's not the records, it's the ability.
Yeah, but at the same time, your objective is significantly, or goal is significantly different than a regulator. And I'm not saying that you don't look out for the health and safety of the fighters. That's what we get paid. The executive director is the person that's ultimately responsible for approving that fight in the ring. But when you have fighters that are under contract and you propose certain fights that are clearly not approvable, for one fighter has fought less competitive fighters, then it becomes an issue. Or if you listen to John from BoxRec, who made a presentation, and he'll go ahead and judge those fighters worldwide and from their country, and how many stars they give them, and he has a whole format to go by. Hey, I agree. It's better to know a fighter, see him train, know what he's gone through, but there are other means to do it. That, you know, there has to be a happy medium between the promoter and the regulator. And just because that was the way it was done 20 years ago, because all you had is fight facts, look at A and B and make a decision. Now you can go to YouTube, Google, find a guy that was over in Cuba that you guys are putting on, or it's not you, another
Good points. And I'm not just stroking you; those are good points. When I started for many years, the commissions had no input whatsoever in the matches, and with all respect to Mr. Bennett and other commissioners here, we had great fights for decades without commissioner involvement. The matchmakers have to take pride in what they're doing. We have to satisfy the fans, the television networks or television audiences. Yeah, we're trying to develop talent. We've done a lot of the fighters that you see today, the Mayweathers and De La Hoyas, came up with fellows like myself matching them with or without commission involvement. Boxing thrived when we didn't have commissioners, and I'd like to think it's better now that we do have commissioners. And the points that you made, Bob, are well made. So. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Our job is hard because we get a lot of fights that are thrown at us from matchmakers and promoters.
Right.
Like Bob's saying, if you don't look these people up, you don't have the resources, or if you have the resources, you look it up. A lot of times you go back to the promoter or the matchmaker, you tell them it's not a good provable fight. You get an argument. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it has to do with how many rounds the guy went. Okay, he could have had that record that he has, 20 and 19 or whatever it was, and the guy might have went, never got stopped. You know? And he might have went the distance with a lot of top fighters, and that changes the latitude of which you're looking at. Okay? But now you get a guy they throw anywhere 20 and 19 record to fight a guy 20 and 0, and he's been stopped 15 times out of his last 16 fights, 17 fights. That changes the whole scenario. Okay? And maybe he did get lucky on that fight, and the other guy had a bad night. He came out looking better than what it should have been on paper. But that don't always happen. And our job is hard because we're looking for the safety of the fighters. You're looking sometimes as a record, to build a record for a fighter. And that's what makes it so hard. You're not going to put a hard fight against a guy you're trying to build a record on. It's maybe a mediocre fighter, and that makes it hard for us. And just to piggyback on that, and I've heard it said a litany of times from promoters that I've gone to lunch with very prominent promoters and their entire staff. One day, a promoter, let's just say from out of state. And we sat around and we talked and we said, hey Bob, this was probably my first week on the job. And then after we first got all warm and cozy and all that was done, we started talking business. We go, as a promoter, we know we don't have to fix fights anymore. We know who's going to win the fight 95% of the time. So then you wonder why, boxing's not doing as well as it should be. You talk about the health and safety of the fighter, but you know who's going to win 95% of the time. Just like everybody in this business that's been in it longer than the 26 months that I've been in it, although I've done amateurs for 10 years and had my fair share of fights, and I know something that's fair and that isn't. And if it's not fair, then I'll pick up a fight. But I mean, I don't know how you can justify that position.
Which position is that to justify? I mean, I understood everything to the.
When I hear from a very prestigious promoter that we don't have to fix fights anymore like we did.
Oh, okay.
When I was in the FBI, I prosecuted. I investigated a fixed fight. So a fighter took a guy. There was conspiracy to fix a fight, as you well know.
Yes.
Okay, so two pled guilty, two were found guilty and tried. But if the promoter knows, and they've said, and it's been brought up in this conference, you know who's going to win the fight 95% of the time. You tell me how all those fights are provable like that, you already know the winner.
Bob, thanks for clarifying. My answer to that would be there's odds on football games, basketball games. Everything has a winner. Well, most contests, whether they're boxing or other athletics, there's point spreads to try and even it out. We don't have that in boxing, but if you're saying mismatches, life is a mismatch. Nobody's created equal here. We all have.
But you know what, Bruce, and I don't mean to be putting you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
You're very good at what you do, and you have a lot of experience. But in this particular area, there isn't a level playing field. And,
Right.
And like Frank said, okay, somebody said to me earlier that I'm the strictest executive director, and I got to tell you, man, I acquiesce to some of your matchmakers because I'll go back and I'll research something. I go, okay, maybe I made a mistake here. Maybe this is approvable. Because I'm looking at it, and I'll even say to the matchmaker, I said, if that was your kid, would you put him in a fight against that guy? The minute that matchmaker hesitates, I said, you already gave me my answer. And it just needs to be, I really think that the promoters need to do a better job in presenting the fights to the commissions. And I think what's evident by that is if you go to a boxing match, the front 75, 80% of the card, most of the house isn't even filled until you get to the main, co-main, or a fight before that. And why? Because they're not competitive. You go to some, I don't want to show any prejudice or bias, but say to some MMA type fights, and you know what? After the first or second fight, man, that house is filled. And why? It's because they make competitive fights like they did in the old days, So I think that for me, that's my number one challenge in this business, and I think that there's way too many people that acquiesce to the pressure of a matchmaker because they've been in the gyms for 20, 30 years. They know the fighters. They know every answer to give you to come back and counter. So when you get ready to present your position, you got to have plenty of rounds in the chamber to go back and forth to be able to utilize prolepsis in the art of disputation. How's that for you?
That's good. I agree with you, and I think the key to being a good executive director or commissioner is communication with the people who are. I mean, we're licensed to make matches. You can call it a privilege, you can call it an honor, whatever. We're licensed, which means we have a degree of expertise in what we're doing. If I was an executive director, I would trust my matchmakers. Until we prove that we're not trustworthy anymore.
Then if that's the case, how can you come out and say, we know who's going to win this fight 90 to 95% of the time? Why would I trust you when you're already telling me you know who's going to win that fight 90 to 95% of the time? Well, that's not,
Bob, unless it's a draw, someone's going to win and someone's going to lose.
Yeah, but I'll go back to your earlier analogy about basketball or football or a point spread or something like that. This is a completely different sport. Somebody's trying to take somebody's head off their shoulders, okay, and knock them out, all right? So to make that analogy, which I've heard a number of times too, it's really not comparing apples to apples. So I don't really think that is a very prudent analogy. And like I said, it's obviously something that I'm very passionate about, that I'll continue to learn and grow, but I will always err on the side of the fighter because I'm the guy that's ultimately responsible, and my commission depends on me to make those tough decisions. So in the beginning of what you said, I don't think it was very fair, but that's fine.
Okay. Well, I think we all agree that boxing is entertainment. Mismatches, flagrant mismatches are not entertaining. Nobody wants to see that, and we don't want to have that. Yeah, we'd like our guys to win, but we'd like them to win in entertaining, competitive fights. That's how we grow an Oscar De La Hoya or a Floyd Mayweather. They both had close calls on the way up, but they became better fighters for that. So, not to get into a pissing contest with you, but if I could digress just a moment, if I was an executive director, bad fights don't kill boxing as badly as bad decisions. So I'd be working on my officials. I would.
Well, that's great. Okay, so you want to digress to make, segue away
No, I'm not. All right.
Officials are completely different subject.
Okay.
That's why we have training, and that's why in the last 2 years, we haven't had a major controversy. Okay? Because we make a concerted effort to make sure that our officials are trained, they're held
Okay.
accountable. We'll use the pot index, we'll do a litany of things to hold our officials accountable, because we're expected to get it right. The judges and the referees are expected to score and referee that fight. That's what they get paid for, and look out for that fighter. But that's a completely different subject. So I don't think you're staying on subject.
Okay. I digressed. I apologize. Just wanted to make a point.
You started it.
That's right, but you got to finish it. So, anyway, I don't know if we're ever going to agree. I have my philosophy on matchmaking. It's to develop talent and to entertain the fans and the TV viewers, and I think we do a pretty good job of that. When an arena is empty on a big pay-per-view show, a lot of those fans are not fans. They're hotel-invited guests. They're there for the main event only, and on regular shows that we do, the fans are there right from the first fight. So, any other questions? Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me, and